Hello, and welcome back to the Budget Gourmet. If you're new here, my name is Dan. I try to help you and your family create wonderful, delicious meals, all while saving a little bit of money. It is cold out. It's officially here. Fall it's here. There's no question about it. Look at the greenery, or lack thereof, around me. Fall, winter, these are the months I look forward to. I'm in this, and I feel fine. I'm very well insulated. So I'm wearing this, but I still have shorts on and flip-flops. People consider shorts and flip-flops to be a summer thing, whatever. I wear them all year round. The one drawback for this time of year is weather changes, especially where I live. It's 30 degrees in the morning, and by lunchtime it could be 75 degrees. But because of that, my family was feeling a little bit under the weather again this week. So I decided, what better way to remedy that sickness than with a little bit of soup? What better soup to make than Italian wedding soup? As I'm speaking about the cold and everything like that, there's a wasp. Be gone. Away. Thank you. Not to me. Okay, Italian wedding soup. Let's get right into the video. Okay, so first things first here is we're going to get our vegetables prepped and ready to go for our soup. I'm going to be honing my knife edge, and we're going to start out by dicing up a red onion for our mirepoix. If you didn't know, a mirepoix is just a sautéed mixture of diced vegetables such as carrots, celery, and onions, herbs, and sometimes ham or bacon, used especially as a basis for soups, stews, and sauces. So basically, all we're doing here is we're just trying to get as much flavor as we can from our vegetables and building a nice base or foundation for our soup. The next component of our mirepoix that we're moving on to is our carrots. One of the things I like to do that helps make cleanup just a little bit easier is I like to get a plastic bag or a paper bag, and I like to throw all of my peels in here, all of my scraps. Now, you can just throw these away, or if you wanted to save them, you could also put these into a pot with some boiling water and potentially make a nice vegetable stock too, just using your scraps. I'm going to be dicing up the carrots as well. I'm going to try to make sure that my carrots, my onions, and my celery are all about the same size. I just want little nice bite-sized pieces so they all cook evenly together. Now for the final part of our mirepoix, we're just going to be dicing up some celery. Another thing I like to do is I also like to try to keep the pieces a little bit thicker so they don't completely turn to mush while they're cooking. Once you're done, you should have something like this. And now we're moving on to the only other part of our preparation here is our meatballs. One of the reasons I like this recipe is that it is very simple. This is the only other component, and it's also a fun one. You could probably make meatballs with your kids. It's a good activity, sort of gets them in the kitchen, and you could just have a fun time together as a family. I'm starting off here with a pound of ground beef and also a pound of sweet Italian sausages. You can also substitute, if your grocery store has it on hand, just ground pork. My grocery store had none available, so I'm just taking the casing off of our sweet Italian sausage here. For my ground beef, I just got whatever was on sale. I believe this was 80% lean, 20% fat ground beef. Now, for the actual making part of our meatball, I'm going to be creating a binder here. I'm going to be starting off by whisking together 1 egg along with about, I want to say, half a cup of whole milk. You want to make sure you have just enough to coat your bread thoroughly. I'm using 2 pieces of bread here. You can use whatever kind of bread you want. I know some people like to use breadcrumbs. And we're just going to mix this thoroughly and make sure that all of our bread is coated and starts to form a paste. Once our binder is finished, I'm going to be adding a little bit of salt and pepper to our meat mixture. That sausage already has a lot of beautiful spices in it, and I don't want to overwhelm it too much with too many of my own. After adding our soaked bread, we're just going to make sure that our meat is mixed thoroughly. Our soaked bread is not only going to act as a binder to hold our meatballs together, but it's also going to keep those meatballs very moist as well. After everything has been mixed, it's time to make the meatballs. I'm going to be adding a little bit of olive oil to my hands to prevent sticking, and this part was kind of tricky for me because I didn't want to get any meat in my Band-Aid. So I tried to make them all the same size, but they sort of turned out like snowflakes. No two are the same. Just try your best to make them all around the same size and little, and if you didn't and they all look unique like mine, well then that's okay. I'm gonna get my pan here on a medium-low heat, and I'm gonna be adding a big glug of olive oil, and all we're looking to do here is just to brown our meatballs. We're not looking to fully cook them. We just want to produce a little bit of flavor and also sort of keep that meatball shape when it goes into our soup pot. After about a minute or so, our meatballs are starting to turn a nice golden brown, and a nice little fond is being produced at the bottom of our pan. Now a fond, or fonds de cuisine, refers to the flavorful solid bits of food stuck to a pan or pot after cooking. These bits are deglazed with a liquid in order to produce a stock, broth, or sauce. So that's exactly what I did. I just added a little bit of chicken stock to the bottom of my pan and tried to scrape everything up. Again, just trying to build up as much flavor as we can. Now it's time to move on to our soup. In my soup pot, I've put a little bit of neutral oil along with some butter, and we're just going to make sure that all that butter is melted. Then we're going to be adding our vegetables. I'm not looking for a hard cook on this. I'm just wanting to saute for a few minutes and let the vegetables just start to soften up. After my vegetables are done sauteing, I'm going to be adding our meatballs along with that fond that I scraped up earlier. And now all that's left to do is just to add our chicken stock. I'm adding about 64 ounces or 2 quarts of chicken stock here. I always try to get unsalted because I want to add the salt myself. This just makes it a little bit easier for me to keep the saltiness level and the flavorings to where I want them to be. I let this soup simmer for about half an hour or so the meatballs could get fully cooked, and during that whole process I was constantly tasting and adjusting the flavors. You want to be cautious though, because you don't want to over salt it. After that 30 minutes was up, I added our orzo pasta here. You can use whatever kind of pasta you want, but traditionally, short-cut pasta is typically used. Here's another part of our soup adjustments. The soup was really rich for me, so I decided to skim off as much fat as I could. It was just a little bit overwhelming. Our soup is nearly finished, and now it's time to move on to the final piece of the puzzle, is adding our spinach. I'm adding it at the end because I just want the spinach to be wilted. I don't want the spinach to overcook, thus it's why I'm adding it at the end. At this point, our soup was looking a little bit chunky now that our pasta had been cooked, and it was a tad salty. So thankfully, I had an extra quart of chicken stock, and I always recommend having extra in case you run into this problem. Not only did it take care of the saltiness, but it also helped to declump some of those ingredients in there. And our soup is now done. All that's left to do is plate. The final thing I'm going to be adding is just a little bit of toasted bread along with some fresh Parmesan cheese. I really loved this recipe. It was exactly what I needed during these colder days. And a bonus for me is that my kids actually enjoyed it and they ate it. So that's a win. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye!